Okay, so last episode, we talked a little bit about me being out here in Asheville and what happened at the end of September, Hurricane Helene. And I know I was wanting to wait until maybe a couple of the girls were back to get more in depth with it, and tell you like my hurricane story and tell you about the Nanostead Foundation. But I need to get into it now because I'm going to tell you why there's need. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, so the hurricane hit, like I told you, end of September, and everybody kind of, I think, remembers it was in the news for a little while after we got our cell service back that cell phone service is out. Like the land has changed because of the flooding, and the area is just devastated. Um, and I work in Asheville, but I live out closer to Marshall, North Carolina. So a lot of different things happened, but I ended up mucking and working in downtown Marshall for a few days. And then once I kind of finished up with my friend down there, Martha, that we talked about last time, um, I just asked if I could help at what I thought was just like a decontamination center. Because everybody especially in the first month, everybody that was going down into probably any area with debris, honestly, but especially in Marshall, had to be completely suited up, TJ. I'm like talking full suits, respirator masks, gloves, certain types of gloves, certain types of suits, boots, everything. Because the mud is not okay. We have partial results back. Somebody like ran some results or tests on the mud down there, and I like when I was down there just helping my friend in that first week, I had like what I thought at first was like a sunburn on the small part of my face that wasn't
Mm.
covered by the mask. And it lasted a couple days. Like it was definitely probably like a chemical burn. So just to give you context of like why we are out there doing it, but I really want to kind of get into more detail about that particular spot.
What were the chemical burns from? Like what was the
The mud. Oh, the results of the test. I have to find it on Instagram. But
Well, you were saying a while
uh,
ago that the mud was contaminated because of sewage, is that right?
Oh yeah. So like whenever there's like this is not totally uncommon, but when there's a huge flood somewhere in you know, places that has buildings and stuff like that, the water is no mercy. Like it's gonna flow into everything it can and bring things up. So to include sewage and then also like cars were floating down, the
Oh
middle of
yeah.
town, power lines and stuff. So tanks and things were spilling into everywhere that weren't supposed to be, and that didn't just stop at any point until the water was gone. So there was other like chemicals and stuff in it too. Um, and everybody in Marshall, it's about 15, 20 minutes from Asheville. It's a really, really small town. It's a really, really creative town. There's a lot of art and stuff there. It's a lot of history. It's a really small historical community, but it's really, really small. That's my point. And there's a lot of these really small communities deeply affected like this. Um, but Marshall just immediately dove in as a community. Like it was insane. And so I feel like, there we're really a little bit uh, you know, to be like ahead of the game comparatively to some of these other communities that are still trying to, you know, they're still in a place where they're like just beginning to this cleanup, and we're already kind of moving into phase two in downtown Marshall, where we're starting to like look at things from a construction lens and like a rebuild lens, and also trying to move our displaced residents in Madison County from like short term solutions to long short term housing solutions. There's about
Mm.
approximately 20 families that we know of in Madison County that are currently displaced. So in Marshall, though, my point is, it happened really fast. It came together really quickly, and it's super organized, and they've accomplished so much, and there's still a lot to do, so much to do. But when I say they, I mean CHD, which is like the Community Housing Commission, I think, which works with like residential housing and stuff. Their parking lot and business, and their foundation that they've been doing great work with. We've kind of worked alongside in tandem with them as much as we could from the beginning. And they're right there in one building at kind of going into downtown Marshall. And then right next to it is this, what was just this little tiny home construction, like plot of land with an office on it, called Nanostead. And when people started going down there and donations started coming in, this Nanostead had to kind of just become a donation like running center as well. So there was, and then decontamination, people coming up out of the in and out of the mud that needed to be like cleaned off and stuff as well. So amidst all these people going and volunteering to go downtown to clean up their town and try to save what they could of their businesses and homes, there are all these people up here at Nanostead Foundation, CHG, who are, preparing them for all that, taking in all these donations. We've had food trucks come in. We have a kitchen working and volunteers back there that are like feeding. I mean, just constant fluctuation of numbers of volunteers every day. Mm-hmm. But we just we're a foundation now. Nanostead is, and that's who I'm working with right now. Like where I'm at daily.
What's the name? Is it Nanostead or Nanostead?
Nano,
Nano, like small?
Like small.
Okay.
Stead, like homestead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Isn't that clever? It's so cute.
That is good. Okay. That is good.
So Nanostead company is trying to get back to, building tiny homes as much as they can amidst this. But we have literally set up an entire operation right there on the spot of land with storage containers for all the donations. The PPE and volunteer stand is still operating every day. We still need volunteers. CHD has got their more residential stuff going next door. We have got an information desk, like for incoming and outgoing volunteers, and also like people in the community can come there for information. We have all those points of contact that everyone needs, and it's just, there's a lot going on. I don't even remember what the original question or thing I was explaining there was. Oh, but it's a foundation, yeah. So there's a board now we've established. They did, what is it, a 513-C form or whatever to become a foundation. So you can donate to Nanostead and
501c3
or whatever. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that. But we're definitely to that point. I didn't give the right information last time, so if we could like put this stuff in our caption when we perhaps or wherever we post this, that would be really good. But I wanted to clarify on how you can help in Marshall and how you can help Nanostead if you want. Our email is marshallrelief@gmail.com. We're really always looking for volunteers. And then the website for the hub is helpmarshall.org, not whatever the hell I said last time.
All right, yeah. We'll put that in the link, the comments, the description of the video, yeah.
Okay, because I have some more info too. Also, on that note, like I said, like I'm out there, a bunch of us are out there, like 20 of us are out there every day trying to coordinate a whole bunch of stuff. And the most important thing is trying to get these 20 displaced families or so. And really, if it goes further than that, fine, but into long-term housing solutions before it gets really cold, because it gets really, really cold here. And it's right on us. Yeah. And unfortunately, I guess I shouldn't say something negative, but FEMA and Red Cross were finally able to kind of make it out here to settle with us last week. And so we've met with them a couple times, and the most important thing that I think that's coming out of these meetings is that it's going to be several months from application time to delivery of, if it is like an RV or temporary housing that these families have to get from FEMA. So that's spring. Okay. So everyone's kind of on their own through winter, and that's a really scary notion. So we need to raise monetary donations and funds. We need to get volunteers in here. And then we also really need to call to action. There's approximately 600 Airbnb and vacation home owners throughout Madison County that really shouldn't hopefully be a full or anything right now, because we're asking for no travelers. But if anybody has a vacation home or empty home in this area, they can actually apply with FEMA through FEMA direct leasing agreement. And I will provide links for that too. We can provide links to that in our caption. And it's a much faster application process for like a landlord essentially of a short-term rental property or vacation or something like that to get through that application process and then get paid from FEMA. And they can connect with us at Nanostead or CHC, and we can put them in connection with a family that needs a place like this, that needs a little bit of their own space and time to heal. And my Daria, who's she's our coordinator for that between everybody, and I have some information for her too. She said it beautifully, like calm their nervous systems. I remember telling you, TJ, in the beginning of this, I'd never faced trauma and like raw grief face to face like I did after this hurricane. And I think I really can't stress that enough in this particular moment or message, because these people need to be warned, they need to be safe, they need to be calm. And I know some of them now, and they're beautiful humans. So that's something that we really want to drive home. So we're gonna get all that information in the link. I forgot what else I said I was going to talk about. And Nanostead Foundation. That's it. But yeah, that's what's been going on.
That's really good. That is really cool. So with Nanostead, they'd been building these tiny homes, and you said like their area had been washed out where they built the homes before. Is that what you mentioned about that?
It's Nanostead kind of sits at like the top of the hill, a slow decline down into downtown Marshall, which is right next to the French Broad River. And the French Broad River took over and flowed right through the area. So it's like the closest available space or contact point at this point. And there was a hub in the middle of downtown as well. So we kind of operated together. Like we would suit all the volunteers up at the Nanostead hub and then send them down, and they would eat or get whatever they needed, medical supplies, whatever, from the hub down there. And that's how we kind of all rolled. And CHC, I think, was working at a different location, mostly doing runners and focusing on donations that were coming in, like, stuff that the families needed, where we were trying to focus on like getting the PPE equipment and stuff like that. And so it was my point with that is like this community, Madison County, Marshall in particular, I feel close to my heart, but it all just like came together in a way that was like truly magical. The way everybody in this community decided to help and just found their spot. And CHC and ROAR they were working with also was just sending people to all these families like up in the hills, in these spots, not up in the hills, down by the water, obviously. But like my point is like places that it's hard to get to. We didn't, that maybe kind of sketchy, dangerous, like drives and deliveries on a regular basis. Like they were amazing. So, and now, that was crazy. It was such an experience to volunteer through, because it was like, I mean, you walked onto the lot and it was like a shot of adrenaline, because there's just so much going on every day for the first like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And your nervous system, I feel like, kind of gets used to that. So a lot of volunteers, I feel like, are probably, experiencing that, like, okay, what next? And what's next is this, like, that calm, and now we've got to move on to these bigger missions, and we need help with that too, though. But really cool stuff was happening out here post Helene, and there was a lot of like negative and weird stuff too circulating Asheville and Western North Carolina. But at least stuff was circulating, by the way. Like we still should be regularly in the news. Asheville still doesn't have clean water.
Yeah.
And they might not till mid-December. So
damn.
It's like living out here is like living in a place that a bomb was dropped on. And I just can't stress that enough to anybody that is taking the time to listen to this podcast. And tell your friend, tell your friend, tell your friend. Like, now we've got to clean up, and we do have a presence of help, but it's spread out and few and far between. And they just got to Marshall, FEMA and Red Cross and all that, and they just got to Marshall and started meeting with us last week, and there's still more places. Sorry, those ones down. There's still more further, places further out from Asheville for them to get. So it's just crazy.
Yeah, stuff like this, like because I was going to ask about the water situation when you mentioned the contamination of the toxic mud and everything, and how that spread everywhere, and
Yeah,
not and more. And it's a good point you brought up, more than just the sewage. It's just the chemicals that are just in vehicles and in objects, trash and sanitation and
yeah,
stuff like that. Water doesn't care. The water's going to mix all that shit together,
yeah,
and literally a lot of times, and how that's just going to permeate throughout society. And the way you mentioned that the city seems like a bomb was dropped on it. It's times like these, or situations like these, that really remind all of us about the precarity of our existence, and how a lot of us, we're shielded from nature in a lot of ways, which is kind of the point of civilization, to shield us from the elements and from animals and from the destructive forces that are a part of nature. And whenever we have something like a tornado or a hurricane or a wildfire, like some sort of natural disaster that the best of our bulwarks and armaments can't prevent, we see the actual damage, like what
yeah,
planet Earth can do to you at any time. And
yeah.
you mentioned how, I think you said, it seemed like like when you said the power was gone and there was no internet connection or something, it felt like you had been transported like 100 years back in time or something, like that.
It was
And
rough out here. But it was also like quiet. All those like crazy stories that I remember hearing about, like bodies floating down the river and
mhm.
people being armed everywhere. It like, of course, like some of that was happening some places, but like we were so, it was blissful there for a minute too. But also, yeah, like, it was like 100 years ago. It was rough.
Yeah,
We had a DVD
yeah.
player out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it is. It's funny. So you said like you didn't see like the Mad Max shit. Like you were worried it would look like it would devolve into like Lord of the Flies or some shit. Yeah, this is
There has been very some days
some of it.
for sure
Yeah.
Lord of the Flies, but for the most part, no. Like we would like there was like whispers of like weird stuff, but it was mostly like from outside sources.
Hmm.
It was a lot of love out here for
Yeah.
right immediately and from the get go. So I do want to stress that, but there's also a lot of
It,
fear. It
it
was
is a
very
lot of love.
fearful.
Yeah. It's what this is what I talk about all the time. Whenever people talk about, end of the world scenarios, the first thing everyone thinks of is weapons. They always think about, ammunition, they think about firearms and everything. And my first question, it's funny because it relates to exactly what you said, is okay, you're thinking about, your plan to take over the government or the collapse society, and you have all these guns. Great. How much fresh water do you have? That's the question I have. And most people don't have any. They don't have any laying around. And if you do, you might have a couple weeks, maybe a couple of months. But if you don't have immediate access to fresh water, you're just going to die. That's what's going to happen. It's going to happen
Yeah,
real quick. And so, human beings, I think I've probably mentioned this on the show before, that our emotions, like you said, like the lot of love and a lot of fear and everything, is what keeps us human. Because as animals, we're not terribly impressive. We don't
yeah.
have claws or fangs or wings, scales, or we can't see in the dark.
God, I
But
want scales so bad.
we got,
Just kidding.
yeah, I mean, most human beings are just not, well, most of us aren't that impressive. Some of us happen to be, but most of us aren't terribly impressive. But left on our own, we can't really do anything. One human being stuck in the woods is going to die. That's the most likely scenario. But you put
Eventually,
enough
yeah.
of us, yeah, you put enough of us together, we can do anything, like anything we want. And uh, that that need and that desire to bond with other people, even in terrible situations, is what keeps us alive. It's what's kept us alive this long. It's why weren't
Yeah.
all eaten by lions in the African savannah 200,000 years ago. So it's situations like
True.
that are really difficult, but it does show the best and sometimes the worst of humanity. But lucky for us, the best is pretty damn good.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting that you say that because now that the dirt is settled and the needs are evolving and changing, like I said, my volunteer work has shifted to a lot of administrative and media stuff now. I'm back to like I said, everyone kind of fell into a role that was their forte, and
Yeah.
just like started helping. So, or that they became good at, honestly. But so I'm seeing like a lot of, information and stuff like that. And I think now is the time that I'm starting to see it's going to become a lot more um, political, probably. You know how much I love politics, politicking, TJ. So, yeah, we'll see. But at the end of the day, and out here in Marshall, it's still just people doing their best. And the FEMA people and the Red Cross people, like, they're great. Like,
Yeah.
I feel bad pointing out that it's 1 month in, because I really like our liaison and I believe him, and they have a lot of great resources. So,
Mhm.
but fact to fact, I mean, it's been a
Yeah.
month. It was a month, so. And
Yeah.
I'm really discouraged at a lot of I can tell that they're telling us the truth and hard facts, but like I can't stress the way
It
I
doesn't change the
felt.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah, sitting in that meeting and hearing well, really, it wasn't even 3 months. I think is the average of the estimate for
Hmm.
long-term temporary housing, being given from FEMA for applicants, and you've got to qualify too. So
I
that's a
mean,
whole other topic of conversation. I won't even get into that right
yeah. I don't even know. Yeah.
now. Yeah. So I was sitting there, and I'm always feeling like, who am I to be sitting here taking information? And I just take minutes in most of these meetings as a volunteer. But sitting here hearing this stuff, and then realizing the actual real life impact, and the fact that we've got to spread that word to this community. We've got to let people. Nobody knows how long FEMA is supposed to take. I
Hmm.
mean, I have had literally some of these people that are displaced ask me that again, and I've been like, whoa. But sitting there and finding that out, it's hard. They're good people, they're doing their best, but the system is broken. Like, all of our systems are
Yeah. And
not
that's,
working
yeah.
close
Yeah.
maybe.
It's such a shame too, because the bigger a system gets, the easier it is or the more fail points there are. It's just that, yeah, it is weird that you mentioned, I don't know if we'll keep this in the episode or not, but when you said you were sitting in the meeting and you're like, what am I doing here? Are they allowing me to be here and hearing all this shit? What is
Yeah,
going on?
I'm
That
like,
is,
okay, that's fine.
yeah, I feel like I have that feeling all the time. And so many times in my life, I'm sitting here like with my job, like with the fucking state rental assistance program. And I'm like working with all these agencies and shit, and they're all asking me shit. And I was like, they put me in charge of this? They tell me? Like what?
Like, how for me, like, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but it just is honestly kind of like a good refresher that, like, there's no robots out here doing some of this, like, really hard
Yes,
emotional work, or and that concept too, like, really hits me. It's just people
it's just people.
feeding their families and doing their best, and good people, like, it's a good idea, but what is the Red Cross? What is FEMA? But it
Yeah,
started the same way that what I'm doing right now. Like, disaster happened, people had to come together and figure it the fuck out, and then something was born. And
it's
so
yeah, it is kind of mind blowing in a lot of ways because on the one hand, you're sitting there, you're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe they're trusting me to do this. And you thought, well, wait a minute. The people doing it are people too, just like me. They're not
yeah,
superheroes. Like, they're just regular ass folks. And I had this thought in the army all the time, all the time. I'm like
yeah.
sitting in a meeting about intercontinental ballistic missile warfare between Syria and Jordan, or
Holy
Syria
cow.
and Syria generally. And people are asking me questions about this shit. It's like, man, I'm just some fucking dude. I'm just some guy. I'm like, what are you asking me this shit
Just
for? Yeah,
okay.
I'm just the guy. And I feel like I've had this happen so many times in life. And every time, and then the people I talk to, the people who are like, really high upper echelon shit, I'm like, oh yeah, they're just people. There is this is it's a weird, I don't know. I can't figure out if people are just a lot less impressive than I've always thought. Actually, that's it. I always thought people would be more impressive the more I go along. It's like, I mean, okay, they're normal. Most of them are just normal. And I think like the imposter syndrome thing is heavy. Like it goes really strong. Like no matter what you do in life, I don't think anyone ever feels like they belong in that spot, you
I think
know.
about this all the time.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, even like, being a single parent or like wanting to,
Jesus, yes.
it's like I have, it's so nice. Like I have friends, acquaintances, like, but that will be like young single moms, and they'll be like, oh my God. And I'm like, sometimes it makes you want to just like freak out or something, or do, show them how, everybody can like present something, the imposter syndrome, or like you're gonna see brightest moments on social media and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, like a human being is a human being. I'm to the point where the only thing I think really separates anybody is like stupid amounts of money. If you're a really, really rich person, we're not talking about you. You suck. So
fuck them. Yeah.
Fuck 'em.
Yeah. I agree. I have no respect for rich people. I love it. I have no respect at all. And oh shit. Parenting. So I don't have any kids, and I look at people as like, man, like that responsibility of having children, that would it's just incredible that anyone does it, that anyone can actually do it. Like you had to keep this child alive for 18 years.
And there's going to be hurricanes and COVID and weird shit.
Yeah, stuff you can't even control. God is trying to kill your kids, and not just your kids aren't just trying to kill themselves, but the earth.
It's a wild time to choose to procreate. I don't know if I can recommend it to anybody in this way.
But there's the thing: it's probably the best time, honestly. Like it's never been better. Like throughout human history. Yeah, throughout human history, like if your kid got an infection 100 years ago, kid was gonna die from a small cut. Like no antibiotics or anything like that. It's just weird to think about. And also, well, you may not have felt this quite as strongly, and you'll understand when I tell this example, but I always talk about how when you're a little kid, definitely, you always assume the adults know what's going on. You always assume that, okay, that's mom and dad. They're 34. They must know that everything there is to know about life. And then you become a teenager, and you're like, oh, jeez, these adults are stupid. They're fucking morons.
And then I got it.
Yeah, and then you're 23 and you're like, oh, okay.
And you're like,
the adults knew more. Yeah, they knew more than I thought. Then you hit 30, you're like, nope, the adults were stupid after all. Turns out they were pretty stupid. Then that's I saw this guy talk about how he was like in his 50s or something, and his parents had died. And he went to their house to get their belongings together, settle their estate and everything. And he says that, man, I don't feel right doing this. I don't feel like, he's like, I'm just a kid. Like, why is this happening? And then it hit him. He's like, I bet that's how everybody feels, that you could be 80 years old and you're still thinking I'm just a kid. There's never a moment when, okay, I'm an adult now. There are moments when you have to face it. Like I think I mentioned last time, when other adults ask you for advice, like, oh, wow, I'm that person now. I'm an adult who adults come to for advice. That's a big moment, but there's never like this graduation point where you're like, okay, finally I've made it. I'm adult. I know what's going on. No. It never really happens. Yeah.
It's continuously lost, just winging it.
It is. That is how I feel.
Fake it till you make it, baby. I actually live by that. So
it's worked so far, right? It's worked so far, right?
That's like it's one of my top recommendations.
It is. And like in every manner of life that seems to work. Even like a small shit. Like if you're at work, just walk like you're busy. People will assume you're busy. It's just the shit always works. It's great. But